Hello watch friends, Louis from the Wholecut here. It's time for my third annual State of the Collection video. For transparency, every watch you see here was bought with my own money, no freebies at all. So without further ado, let's get straight into it and have a look at my oversized, affordable watch collection. The first order of business is watches that have left the collection. First up is the Casio Enticer MTP-1302PD-2AVEF. One of my earliest watch purchases, not bad for the money, but made redundant by better watches. Next is the Casio Edifice EFR-S108D-1AVUEF. A wonderful watch, but slightly large for my wrist, so it had to go. There was also a watch that slid in and out of the collection, the Casio MDV-10D-1A2, aka the Mini Duro. Cheap and cheerful, but a bit too small, and it pales in comparison to the real original Duro, so it didn't stay very long. Now let's quickly peruse the watches that I have retained from last year. I will try to keep this as brief as possible. This Pulsar is the first proper watch I ever owned. It was a gift from my mother and I wore it for years before I was really into watches. Just a simple, elegant, dressy little watch. It's dead though. I took it to a watchmaker who said the only remedy is a replacement movement, which is a bit of a bummer. If you don't know, Pulsar is a budget sub-brand of Seiko, and they aren't bad for the money. The funny thing about watch collecting is when you start out, you're usually totally clueless, and I was no different. The first watch I bought with my own money was this Rado, and not just any Rado, but a Rado with a skeleton dial and a mixture of PVD gold plating and black ceramic. Not many people's first choice for sure, but it is unique looking and one that I still love. A great watch for special occasions. I was pure and innocent when I bought this watch. I liked it and I could afford it. No outside influences, bias or snobbery weighing me down when I made the decision. I think I've tried to carry it on in that vein, in that I buy what I like regardless of what anyone else thinks. I bought this small gold-plated Citizen because I wanted a smart gold dress watch with a brown strap for the office. I originally wanted a BM6788-05A, but I've never seen one of those for sale anywhere, so I had to settle for this. It's a beautiful little watch with an elegant case and a lovely textured champagne dial. The Eco Drive movement is reliable and accurate and will keep on running unless you leave it in a drawer like me and the battery keeps dying. I don't wear it all that much, so I find I often have to leave it out in the sun to recharge the battery, which is a bit of a pain. As nice as it is, I bought another watch to replace this one and intended to sell it, but I haven't been able to bring myself to do it just yet. Timex, the brand most affordable watch collectors love to hate, or do we hate to love it? The quality might not be perfect, but there's no denying that Timex constantly churns out some of the best looking affordable watches on the market. The Marlin 34mm is a stunning little dress watch and a pretty faithful recreation of the original Marlin from the 1960s, except for the movement, which is Chinese hand-wound movement. I love the vintage looks without the vintage headache. As I said before, I work in an office, and this simple dress watch is the perfect companion to smarter outfits. I bought it for less than half retail too, at around £70, which is a bargain. This Casio may be one of the best affordable analog Casios you can buy. It's such a beautiful watch with its sporty case and Omega Seamaster Aquaterra style white dial. A great watch for the summer. It's well built and reliable, the seconds hand hits every marker, and even the bracelet is half decent for a Casio. It's only 35mm, which is perfect on my wrist. I wear this watch when I'm going somewhere sketchy and I want my hands to remain attached to my arms. Although I have sold off quite a few of my Casios, I don't think I can bear to part with this one. The rise of AliExpress watch brands means Casio isn't quite the value proposition it once was, but watches like this are still affordable classics. Rotary is one of those watch brands with a great history, but a mostly unremarkable modern catalogue with a few hidden gems. This Art Deco style watch is one such gem. I bought it because of its resemblance to watches like the Universal Genève Pole Router. It's a dress watch, but with a bit more pizzazz. The white chapter ring and pattern centre dial really catch the light, and at only 36mm in diameter, it sits wonderfully on the wrist. I think the dial makes it look a bit bigger than it really is, but that's a minor complaint. It's a limited edition of only 200 pieces, as is its non-identical twin with a tuxedo dial, and amazingly, it's still available. The mind boggles. Snap this one up while you still can. The Tissot PRX is pure class. What more really is there to say about it at this point? It has been talked about to death, including by yours truly. The gold-plated versions are less popular than the stainless steel variants, and that's just the way I like it because it sets it apart just that little bit. I wore it to Watch Pro Salon 2024 this year. When you go to these shows, you tend to want to wear something that will impress other people or something others haven't seen before. But I just enjoy wearing this watch so much I couldn't help myself. I bought the 35mm model, which is a perfect fit for smaller wrists, and it stops it being overly flashy and gaudy. The quartz movement makes it a little bit thinner than the automatic models, and it just wears so well on my small wrist. Is it the best watch I own? Possibly. The Timex 1979 reissue was the hype watch of 2019. As the name suggests, it is a reissue of a classic Timex from 1979, and classic is exactly the word to describe this. The iconic aluminium Pepsi bezel and integrated design make it one of the most popular Timex reissues to this day. The bracelet may well try to rip your flesh off, but it's a small price to pay for such an awesome looking watch. Though it looks like a dive watch, it's about as water resistant as a paperback book. It's still so cool though, and you can buy these watches for as little as £50 used, which is crazy cheap. Oh, another Timex, what a surprise. The Timex Archive MK1 or Mark 1 Mechanical is a typical Vietnam era style field watch. It has an olive dial, 12 and 24-hour scales, and a simple matte finished stainless steel case, paired with a perfectly adequate canvas strap. The crystal is acrylic, which is period correct, and the movement is a cheap Chinese manual wound movement. It probably wouldn't take much of a beating in the wilderness, but if you're a poser like me and want the look without coughing up the cash for a proper, robust field watch, then this watch is a great option, if you can find one. I paid £73, which is crazy good value, but they are getting harder to find. I really don't see the point in spending a fortune on this style of watch when they mostly look the same. Zeppelin is a massively underrated German watch brand, and the 7037-3 is a great example of what this brand is capable of producing. There is a 40mm model available, but I find this 36mm version to be absolute perfection. There's a day, date and week indicator and a real moon phase complication. To cram all of these interesting complications into a relatively small watch while still making the dial legible is no small feat. The sunburst blue dial makes for a wonderful backdrop behind the white Breguet numerals and handset. It's just so elegant. It will set you back a couple of £100 brand new, but it's totally worth it. I bought this Casio when I was going through my must get more watches to review phase. I was drawn to it because of what I thought was a Vacheron Constantin overseas style bezel, and the two-tone design as well. To say this watch is cheap is a huge understatement. The bracelet is extremely thin, and the ultra shiny finishing on the watch makes it look a bit plasticky. But the case is really thin, which I appreciate. The modern watch is so often overly bulky, and this one will easily slip under a cuff, and that deserves some respect. The Seagull 1963 and Vostok Amphibia Scuba Dude are absolute icons of the online watch space. There aren't many serious, affordable watch enthusiasts that haven't owned these watches or similar variations at some point. Do I wear them all that often? No. But how can I part with them when they're just so damn cool and awesome? Two absolute legends that deserve a place in any affordable collection. There are few, if any, watches on the market that look like these watches. I had to go for the classic designs, I wouldn't have it any other way. Russia has become a pariah of a country, but we can still like Vostok, can't we? You thought we were done with Timex, didn't you? Well, you are wrong. This is the Q Timex Vintage Hruodland Limited Edition. Tell me this isn't one of the coolest looking watches in my whole collection, and I'll shut down the channel right now. The beautiful monochrome pipe hand dial, aluminium timing bezel, and expansion band bracelet combine to make one classy watch. It is effectively a redesigned Q Timex 1979 reissue, but with so many changes it has become its own thing. Nobody likes Hruodland anymore, except for John Mayer perhaps, but fortunately the Hruodland branding is small and not too intrusive. I know not everyone is a fan of collaborations or limited editions, and see them as cash grabs, but I do like owning a watch that's a bit less common. I can't help it. I'm too poor to afford a real gold watch, so I bought an Invicta, naturally. One of my all-time favourite Rolexes is the GMT Master 1675, aka the Concorde. I love the contrast between the gold case and bracelet and the dark coloured bezel. I couldn't find an Invicta that looked exactly like that. This was the next best thing. It's gaudy and flashy, even though it's only 37mm in diameter, and yes, it has the dodgy Invicta branding on the side of the case, but it's still fun to wear. Perfect with shorts and a t-shirt for a day out on the refreshing beverages with your pals, where you might end up upside down in a plant pot. Not that I would ever do such a thing, of course. Seiko is revered by watch enthusiasts for its affordable divers and tool watches, but it also makes stuff like the Dolce SACM 150, which is just a really beautiful 33mm gold-plated dress watch. It's a dainty little thing and incredibly thin, but that dial is to die for. It has a high accuracy quartz movement, which has also been used in Grand Seiko models in the past, which basically makes this watch a Grand Seiko. At least, that's what I keep telling myself. If quirky dress watches are your thing, you'll find a lot to like in the Seiko Dolce line. There are tons of models on eBay at really affordable prices. The trouble with great watches is that you don't see one for a while, and then two come along at once. This is what happened with this Seiko. Not long after had I taken delivery of the Seiko Dolce SACM 150, this one popped up on eBay for a very reasonable price. I was attracted to it for one reason: the mesmerising dial. It's inspired by matcha tea, but I like to refer to it as the weed watch, not that I advocate smoking marijuana cigarettes, of course. The dial layout is reminiscent of the Seiko Saab 017, an absolute classic, but with a slightly dressier vibe. The Cocktail Time collection is stuffed full of beautiful dials, but many models are 40.5mm in diameter, whereas this one is 38.5mm, which makes me very happy. I never really understood the devotion to Seiko, but I'm starting to appreciate the brand more and more. It is so there isn't a PRX? No freaking way. Yes, apparently they do exist, and I have one. Maybe more than one actually, you'll have to keep watching to find out. It's a neo-vintage 1990s reissue of a Tissot from the 1930s, and it absolutely nails the Art Deco styling of that time period. The case is pretty small, but it's so elegant and it still runs like a dream after almost 30 years. The strap is a branded Tissot strap, but it doesn't seem original to this watch, so I will have to swap it out at some point. I always say that, but I never actually get around to doing it. See you again next year when I still have it sporting the same strap, I guess. And finally, this watch has a Musso black dial, which when combined with the sporty stainless steel case and bracelet, makes this watch a great looking all-rounder. It's a little bit on the thick side because it contains the cheap Seiko NH35A automatic movement with a ghost date position, which is a little bit annoying. Venezianico has recently released an ultra black Arsenale, which is less than 10mm thick owing to its Miyota 9029 movement, so maybe this series will get a movement upgrade in the future. This watch still looks amazing though, and it is reminiscent of old stone dial Rolex Datejust and day dates that straddle the line between sporty and dressy. I do really wish it was a millimetre or two thinner. It would make a world of difference. So Not a perfect watch, but one cannot appreciate beauty without flaws. Venezianico is going from strength to strength as a brand, so it's exciting to see what they come up with next. Now we get to the slightly more exciting part, the new additions, and yes, there are quite a few. First up is a watch I technically bought in 2023, but after my State of the Collection 2023 video. It's a rip-off of the Patek Philippe Gondolo 5024G, but I don't care because this watch was as cheap as chips. It has a lovely salmon dial with small seconds complication and a fantastic polished tank style case. It's just elegant and classy, exactly what you want with the dress watch. And it shows you don't have to spend a fortune to find something very attractive. You don't have to fork out thousands. This next one I bought because I thought it was unusual, and it really is. I still can't decide if it is attractive or goofy looking, but it's certainly different. I think I paid about £40 for this, and you can really tell when you have it in your hands. The quality is just not there compared to most of the other watches I own. The integrated bracelet design makes it wear quite a bit larger than its relatively small 35mm case width. I think this is one of the few watches I would be happy to let go of. This is the type of watch you can pick up for peanuts because nobody wants them. I paid £44 and aesthetically it's like new. It's probably just been sat in some old timer's sock drawer for the last 40 years. But don't worry fella, I'll take it to Benidorm so it can frolic in its natural habitat. Why buy a Piaget when you can buy a Rotary like this for less than a tank of fuel? The answer is because the quartz movement lasted a couple of months before it went completely haywire. It's such a shame because the condition of the watch is amazing. I'm gutted. I waited months and months for the Laurier Astra to become available to order, and when it did I was too slow and missed the initial allocation, so I had to wait even longer for mine to be shipped, but it was absolutely worth the wait. It's a real beauty. It's a modern vintage watch. That doesn't make any sense, I know, but if you knew nothing about this watch and I told you it was a new old stock watch from 60 years ago, you might believe me. It nails the vintage vibe, but with modern build quality, the best of both worlds. I don't think any watch is perfect, but as far as micro brand watches go, this is almost there. I thought that buying this watch would kill my craving for a vintage Rolex Air King or Datejust, but of course it hasn't. But it's an amazing watch in its own right. Is the Addiesdive AD2030 the best value budget watch ever made? Perhaps. I paid around £35 for this watch, and it has a stainless steel case, solid link stainless steel bracelet, and a Seiko VH31 Mecha Quartz movement, which produces a somewhat satisfyingly smooth sweep. But this watch is more than its specs. The sanded dial is a real marvel. The watch is a joy to wear. I don't like to focus too much on value, because value isn't everything, but if it was, this watch would win first prize. Nivada Grenchen is one of those necro watch brands, a brand brought back from the dead by new owners with no previous ties to the brand, after acquiring the brand name. I'm glad Nivada was revived though, because the Chrono King Paul Newman is an absolutely stunning Daytona-esque chronograph. It isn't a complete Rolex rip-off, as it is based on a vintage Nivada watch, but the similarities are obvious. The combination of the orange chapter ring and golden subdials works so well. In fact, it's made me want to buy more watches with orange accents. I mean, some might call it gimmicky, but then I've always had a soft spot for watches that bring a little bit of flair over class. It's Mecha Quartz, so it has that afterload 24-hour subdial, but I know I will almost never use the chronograph function, so it doesn't bother me. I buy watches for fashion, not function, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. This Casio has a tapestry style dial, like some old 5-digit Rolex Datejusts. The dial and the case look amazing, but the bracelet is a bit shoddy. It's a really smart looking watch, and I think people would definitely pay a bit more for the same watch with a better bracelet that isn't as stiff and as uncomfortable. Casio used to be the best in the business at the sub 100 price point, but again, AliExpress brands are really starting to put the pressure on Casio, and they really should up their game. Another Casio, but this one looks like a Frank Muller. I don't particularly care for Frank Muller, it's just a brand I've never really paid attention to, but this Casio clearly takes inspiration from the Casablanca. I picked it up for £15, which is just throwaway money, such a great bargain for a charming little watch. The narrow strap gives away that this is in fact a lady's watch, but it still works on my small wrist. I love buying quirky little watches like this. Who else owns one? This Laco has been on my radar for a couple of years, since I included it in a video back in 2022. It's limited to just 250 pieces, and as such it's pretty hard to find. It's a Flieger style, which normally would be nothing to write home about, but the combination of the PVD bronze case and olive dial just make this one hit a little differently. It's only 39mm in diameter, which is relatively small for this style of watch, but it suits me perfectly. I knew I wanted a Flieger, but it's hard to find one that doesn't just look the same as all the rest. It has a Miyota 8 series automatic movement, which is a bit poo, but you can't have it all. This one stands head and shoulders above the competition for me in terms of aesthetics, even if it doesn't have the best specifications. I used to think that Geckota was a boring brand, but as I delve a little further into its catalogue, I realised that there are a few hidden gems amongst the relative mediocrity. I bought the Airstream after my friend Kieran from Top Tier Ticker featured it in one of his videos. It takes styling cues from classic Rolexes like the Datejust Chronograph and Explorer and wraps them up in a neat little package. The dial has a lovely texture to it, which along with the faux patina, loomed markers and blue text, just adds that little extra bit of panache. The movement is the automatic Miyota 9039, which is nice to see, and it comes on a smart grey suede leather strap, which is fine and comfortable. It's limited to just 100 pieces, and I think it's sold out now, so it may be harder to find, but definitely worth it for the right price. However, I recently saw this watch on a Jubilee style bracelet, and I can't look at mine in the same way now, and to compound matters further, I saw a brown dial version with a Jubilee bracelet, and now I want that one. I think Rotary might be the new Timex for me. It's that combination of unique and interesting designs and bargain basement prices. It's a lethal combination, and I just can't get enough. I saw this watch pop up on eBay from one of my saved sellers, and I was like, whoa, what is that dial? I slept on it, and the next morning, the seller twisted my arm with a juicy discount, and here we are. I'm a sucker for a weird dial, and I've never seen this watch before. It comes on this crazy coffin link bracelet too, which is integrated into the case. It keeps amazing time, which is remarkable for a watch that's probably 40 years old. Perhaps it has been serviced or the movement has been replaced in the past, but I'm shocked by the accuracy regardless. Did you ever buy a watch because of the lugs? I did. I bought this Tissot A280. The dial is also very attractive with its different patterns and textures. It's so photogenic, though not the purest execution of a dress watch, which hardliners will say must be time only and precious metal, but it's close enough for me. Just another relatively inexpensive watch that is a whole lot of fun. It's probably 20 to 30 years old and much more elegant than most modern dress watches Tissot makes. This Addiesdive is a sort of alternative to the Seiko Alpinist with its combination of the green dial and the loomed yellowy gold hour markers. In fact, the dial is surprisingly sophisticated with its sunburst centre and textured outer section. It uses the affordable favourite Seiko NH35 movement, which isn't the thinnest movement, but it does give the watch a presence on the wrist, especially with its 39mm case size. For close to £50, this watch is unbelievably good. Maybe not a long-term keeper for me though. If the Addiesdive AD2030 isn't the best budget watch on the market right now, then it must be this one, the AD2066. Not only are all of the design choices great, but the execution is really good too. It has the looks and the specs to back it up. The mint green sunray dial looks gorgeous in the right light. I bought my trifecta of Addiesdive watches to review because they were hot stuff at the time, yet here they are, still in my collection. That's a real testament to how good these watches are. So often you will see people review a watch and the next week it's gone. They've sold it or given it away. I was browsing Instagram one day and this watch popped up in my feed. I didn't have to think very long before pulling the trigger. The combination of the gold-plated case and ridiculously oversized lugs and the red dial are absolutely stunning. It's only 35mm in diameter, but it dominates my small wrist. The accuracy of the movement does seem to be a bit erratic, but I'm not sure I want to spend the money on the service this old watch probably needs. Roma has a long history as a watch brand, but it's not one people talk about much these days, which is a boon for finding vintage watches that are worth peanuts. The benefit of having tiny wrists is you can pull off tiny watches, just about. This Casio is another lady's watch, and you can tell, obviously, but tank style watches do tend to be a bit smaller anyway. I love the bluish mother of pearl dial combined with the stainless steel case and bracelet. It just looks extremely elegant. The quality isn't amazing, but I think I only paid £34. In a dream world I would have a collection of Cartier and Piaget, but at my current station in life, this is a cheap and cheerful alternative to those increasingly expensive brands. If you've noticed a theme throughout this video, it's that I have a real penchant for quirky and interesting dials, and this watch is no different. This Hruodland F025 is an homage to the 1960s Omega Seamaster 300 165.024. Seamaster clones are 10 a penny, but this watch's party piece is that tropical patina-like dial. The brown colouring and texture really sets it apart. It's 41mm in diameter, which would normally put me off, but the lyre lugs and short lug-to-lug measurements make it much more wearable on smaller wrists than you might imagine. Proof that the only way you'll know if a watch really works for you is to try it on. Even though I own a lot of watches, I don't tend to buy watches on a whim, at least not very often. This mesmerising kaleidoscope watch from Ernest Borel is another one I've been after for a while. I saw a pristine one listed on eBay for £500 and I tried to buy it for £350, but the seller wouldn't budge, so I decided to be patient, and this one popped up a couple of months later and I bagged it for a little over £100, which I think is an absolute bargain. The watch doesn't have a second hand, but instead has a spinning disc in the centre of the dial, which creates a crazy optical illusion. The case has aged wonderfully with gold burn all over. It does have a little bit of plate loss on the top left lug, which is a real shame, but it's still fantastic for its age. I believe these watches were made in the 50s and 60s, making this watch 60 plus years old. The strap it came on is way too small and hideous, so I do need to find a nice one. If you've watched every minute, thank you very much, I really do appreciate it. I'm pretty happy with my collection, even though it's rather large. I just love finding quirky and interesting affordable watches. The year isn't quite done yet either, so I can't promise there won't be another edition between now and the end of the year. Previously I have made a watch goals video too, and I probably will again, so keep your eyes peeled if you're interested in that. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. What should I bin and what should I add? That's all I've got time for today. Thank you for watching and I'll see you again next time.